There are times in life when you feel different, sensing that you don't view the world like others do. You can't fully explain it, and maybe you never have. It's not by choice. It's just how it is. You see reality through a unique lens, one that gives meaning to silence and depth to what others find mundane. While those around you miss subtle details, you feel them intensely. Silence speaks louder than noise to you. You can tell when someone is hurting, even if they hide it with a smile. You feel others' sorrow as if it were your own, even when they say nothing. You didn't choose to be this way. It's always been who you are. Carl Jung said, "Special souls aren't born in comfort, but are forged in introspection's silent fire." Maybe that explains why, even as a child, you felt you didn't belong, as if your soul came from another time and place. While others sought noise, you turned inward. As the world focused outward, you explored the universe within, often at the cost of loneliness, not because you were alone, but because no one truly understood how you feel or who you are. Your sensitivity and emotional depth, your way of connecting with life, are not weaknesses. They are reminders of something extraordinary within you, a soul that perceives more, knows without being told, and senses what others ignore. You carry an ancient truth inside, one you might not yet articulate, but it's there, quietly burning in your chest. If you felt too emotional, too intense, or too reflective for the world, it's not because something is wrong with you. It's because the world hasn't yet learned to embrace the depth of souls like yours. Remember, you are not broken. You are not lost. You are awake in a world still asleep. An awakened soul changes everything around it, even if slowly. Having a special soul means everything touches you deeply, not because you're fragile, but because your sensitivity lets you see beyond the surface. You don't just hear words, you feel energy, sadness, and longing. Others' pain doesn't just pass you by. It resides in your heart as if it were your own. You silently carry burdens others fear to name. The world may have called you too much, urged you to toughen up, to stop overthinking and feeling deeply. But they don't understand that you can't live any other way. Most importantly, you shouldn't. This way of being, this intensity, isn't a curse. It's a blessing in disguise. Carl Jung believed that to discover your light, you must face your shadow. With all your depth and complexity, you've braved inner storms that others can't fathom. You've sat in silence, questioning your purpose, felt emptiness clinging to your chest, and repeatedly asked, "What's the point of it all?" Yet here you are, searching, asking, feeling. That voice inside you is your soul, and not everyone can hear theirs. Many drown it out with noise, distractions, or pretending, but not you. You've learned to sit in silence even when it hurts, understanding that wounds shouldn't be denied, but honored. Pain doesn't take you away from yourself, it brings you back. Your soul is special because it chose to feel, not to numb itself, to awaken. Yes, awakening can be painful and lonely, but it's also sacred. In a world fixated on escaping inward truths, you chose to go deeper. While others search for answers outside, you closed your eyes and asked questions only the soul can answer. Who am I? What am I here to give? What does it mean to live authentically? You might not have all the answers yet, but asking these questions sets you apart. It doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're finding your way back to your truth. A special soul isn't defined by accomplishments, but by transformation. Every time you chose forgiveness over resentment, allowed yourself to cry when the world said, "Be strong," or opened your heart despite the risk of hurt, you embodied true power. Your soul doesn't need applause or validation. It vibrates at a different frequency, which can feel isolating but is never wrong. In fact, it's exactly what the world needs. Even if you felt like you don't fit in, you're finally beginning to fit into yourself. You weren't born to fit in, but to awaken, transform, and remind others of parts they've forgotten. Jung once said, "A life not lived is a disease from which one can die." Even if you've hidden or gone silent at times, know there's still life in you waiting to be lived, a fire that hasn't gone out, a light that refuses to be extinguished. Your soul isn't special just because it feels different. It's special because it carries a mission, often beyond words, logic, or sight. And that mission isn't always grand or loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as choosing love in a moment of anger, as straightforward as speaking the truth when it's easier to stay silent, as beautiful as recognizing someone's true self when no one else does. Sometimes it's in the smallest details, in silently supporting someone, in listening without judgment, in holding space for those who have forgotten how to support themselves, that your true essence shines through. And perhaps no one has ever applauded you for that. Maybe you've never received recognition, praise, or even a thank you. But your soul doesn't need applause or seek validation. It only seeks truth. When you have a different kind of soul, you can't follow the paths others have paved. You grow weary of the noise, the shallowness, the molds that never suited you. You're not drawn to empty gestures or superficial approval. There's something inside you always searching for more, something authentic, profound, deeply your own. That search hasn't always been easy, because the more awake you become, the more aware you are of how asleep the world is. You see contradictions in daily life. Pain masquerading as success, fear disguised as ambition, disconnection passed as normality. But you can't pretend. You've tried to adapt, to fit in, to meet expectations. Yet something always felt off, a silent discomfort, a quiet emptiness, a persistent voice whispering, "This is not your place." That feeling wasn't a sign of weakness. It was intuition, your soul speaking clearly, asking you to return to yourself, to who you truly are, to the part of you that never sold out or dimmed its light. In the discomfort, the uncertainty, the feeling of not belonging, your true transformation began. Special souls aren't recognized in easy moments. They're forged in chaos, doubt, and pain that forces them inward. When you began that journey, something changed. You stopped seeking answers outside yourself. You no longer needed others to validate your feelings. You became your own refuge, your own guide, your own steady flame, discovering something powerful there. What once hurt you began to open you. What once separated you started to connect you. What once confused you began to reveal truth. A soul that has learned to be with itself is no longer afraid of its own light. That's when everything begins to take on new meaning. Being different no longer hurts. You start to honor it. You realize you weren't born to blend in, but to expand. You weren't meant to follow someone else's path, but to carve your own, to walk where no footsteps existed before. You stop needing to be understood by everyone and begin to attract those who can truly see you, not with their eyes, but with their soul. Real connection isn't about appearances, it's about frequency. When you elevate yours, everything around you begins to shift. That's one of the greatest gifts of a special soul. It awakens others just by existing. You don't need grand gestures to change the world. Sometimes, just by the way you look, listen, and are, you begin to light up places that once knew only shadow. Not everyone can do that. To reach that point, you had to fall, break, and ask the questions others feared. You chose not to remain wounded, but to transform it into understanding, compassion, and strength that stands tall without shouting. Those who have walked through their personal hell with awareness walk later with great humility. They no longer need to prove anything or impose themselves because they know who they are. And that truth, even unspoken, is deeply felt. Your soul is special because it longs to live fully, deeply, and truthfully, with purpose. Anything that isn't real feels unbearably heavy now. Empty conversations, forced connections, externally imposed goals no longer fit your journey. Not because you think you're better, but because you've learned to honor your energy. When you allow yourself to be without filters, life begins to respond differently. You no longer chase after anything or try to prove your worth. You start to attract what resonates with your essence and let go of what you once clung to, because now you know nothing real is forced, and what's meant for you can't be lost. At this point, you no longer seek to belong, but to find truth, presence, and peace. In that process, something profound awakens inside you. You reconcile with your past, not by denying it, but by seeing it as sacred ground that prepared you to awaken. You forgive what once hurt, not by pretending it didn't matter, but by understanding it deeply and looking through compassionate eyes. You feel gratitude not just for the good, but for what made you stronger, wiser, and more human. Your soul is truly special because it chose to awaken in a world that often prefers to stay asleep. It didn't settle for the superficial, but was drawn to the essential. Yes, that may have made you feel alone at times, but that solitude was never a punishment. It was preparation, a sacred space of silence, so you could finally hear what no one else could teach you, your own voice. Now you understand that everything you felt wasn't an overreaction, but sensitivity. Your intensity wasn't a burden. It was a compass guiding you in ways others couldn't see. The way you love deeply, uniquely, isn't a flaw. It's the kind of love this world desperately needs. So don't change. Don't dim your light. Don't hide yourself. This world already has too many copies, but your soul is one of a kind. When the soul truly awakens, it doesn't burst like fireworks or flash with sudden enlightenment. Instead, it's a quiet, intimate, almost invisible process on the outside, but inside, it's powerfully transformational. It's as if the broken, forgotten, or dormant pieces of you slowly begin to reconnect, as if something you've been waiting for your whole life finally starts to align. And in that moment, you realize you can't live the same way anymore. You can't engage in shallow conversations, stay in jobs that dull your spirit, or maintain connections that survive only out of habit. Your soul becomes more selective, not out of arrogance, but from a genuine need to protect its energy. You see that you're not here to be drained. You're here to express yourself, to flourish deeply and unapologetically. Often, the most special souls endure the greatest trials not because they deserved it, but because they needed to move through heaviness, to remember who they truly are. Some truths only reveal themselves in the dark. Some understandings are born only when the world you once knew collapses, because It's in that moment, with nothing left to hold on to, that you discover you were what you were looking for all along. Everything you longed for was already within you, waiting to be seen. You begin to see life through new eyes. What once felt like chaos now feels like movement, necessary, purposeful. What once felt like loss now feels like liberation. You start to trust the process even if you don't fully understand it. You learn to stop chasing what walks away and stop begging for what doesn't flow. A quiet wisdom within you starts to guide your steps. Even when certainty is absent, your soul knows, and that's enough. The modern world often asks you to be logical, productive, predictable, but your soul doesn't move in straight lines or follow clocks. It breathes in cycles, dances in spirals, speaks in symbols, and expresses itself through intuition. When you stop resisting its nature, everything becomes clearer, not easier, but more real. Over time, you realize true fulfillment doesn't come from meeting the world's expectations. It comes from being radically true to what your inner self whispers in silence. And that whisper, though invisible to others, transforms everything. It changes how you navigate life, make choices, create, and love. Your unique soul wasn't meant to be understood by everyone. It came to remind you that you don't need the world's approval to be truly yourself. The most significant transformation of having a unique soul isn't about outward achievements, but what begins to unfold within. There comes a moment when you realize true evolution isn't measured by awards, titles, or recognition, but by how well you connect with yourself, how you speak to yourself when no one is listening, how you support yourself when alone, and how you remain true to your values, even if it means disappointing others. This inner loyalty doesn't develop overnight. It's born from many mistakes and numerous moments where you compromised yourself just to be liked, to fit in, or to cling to what little you thought you had. But a unique soul can't stay disconnected from itself for long. It can try, distract itself, even get lost for years. But eventually, the moment arrives when you can no longer deceive yourself. And when that moment comes, everything changes. You stop chasing what once consumed you. You realize many of your goals weren't truly yours, that many achievements were just facades, and that many relationships were false shelters preventing you from facing yourself. Initially, this realization hurts. Everything built on a borrowed identity begins to collapse, leaving you feeling empty, disoriented, and confused. Yet, within that silent collapse, something ignites a tiny spark, timid but undeniable. It's your soul reminding you of who you are. From that intimate space, you begin to rebuild, not to please or impress, but to be fully yourself, with all it entails: your shadows, your light, your contradictions, and your truth. As you continue on this path of returning to yourself, your relationship with the world shifts profoundly. You no longer live with the urgency of being understood, but with the peace of understanding yourself. From that inner serenity, you live more authentically. You're more mindful of what you consume, more conscious of what you say, and more intentional about who you share your energy with. You learn to set boundaries not out of rejection, but from self-love. You discover that solitude isn't the punishment you once believed it to be. It's a sacred space where your soul gains strength, creativity blooms, and intuition sharpens. When you learn to be with yourself in stillness, everything changes. You no longer fear emptiness. tolerate crumbs disguised as love, or seek external validation to feel worthy. From this new way of inhabiting yourself, you begin to build a different kind of life. Your decisions are no longer driven by external pressures, but by an inner compass quiet, yet unmistakably true. You start to feel what aligns with you and what doesn't. Logical reasons aren't necessary. You sense it in your body, energy, and soul. While this might make you misunderstood by many, it grants you freedom. Freedom from conditioning. Freedom from others' expectations. Freedom to live honestly and authentically. In this state, everything aligns not because life is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You learn that chaos has its beauty, loss brings hidden gifts, and every experience, even the painful ones, is a teacher guiding you back to your center. As you move forward on this path of reconnection, you notice your priorities shifting naturally and authentically. Your life is now shaped by what your soul is ready to express, not by the world's expectations. What once felt urgent fades into the background. The worries that kept you up at night barely catch your attention anymore. It's not indifference or carelessness. It's realizing much of your suffering came from trying to control what was never yours to manage. Now, from a clearer, more conscious place within, you let go. You release the need to have all the answers, fix everything, and carry burdens that were never yours. A sense of lightness emerges not because life weighs less, but because you're no longer trying to hold it all together through fear or the exhausting need to please others. You begin to trust that everything has its timing, that things arrive when meant to and leave when their purpose is fulfilled. You stop resisting change, stop begging for attention, stop trying to explain the unexplainable. You understand you don't have to fight for what is naturally yours, your peace, truth, and path. Amidst this shift, something profound occurs. You experience time differently. You're no longer rushing or chasing a success that was never yours. Instead, you find beauty in simplicity, in quiet moments, in life's sacred pauses. What once felt boring becomes your refuge, and the validation, affection, and purpose you sought outside start to emerge from within. You've discovered that the more you give to yourself, the less you rely on a world that never truly knew how to give you what you needed. With time, this connection to yourself deepens. Your actions reveal it all, the way you speak, walk, and genuinely listen to others. You no longer need all the answers. Simply being present is enough. Seeing people for who they truly are without judgment becomes your language. Your authenticity begins to transform every space you occupy without effort. You start to notice your presence makes an impact, even when you say little. Your calmness speaks volumes, and your ability to truly see others without labeling them creates a space where they can breathe easier. It's not because you see yourself as superior, it's because you faced darkness. You didn't run from it or numb yourself. You stayed long enough to understand it, to learn from it, and to return with light. This is one of the most powerful gifts a soul can offer, the ability to come back from the abyss with a message. Not everyone can do that. Many escape, distract themselves, or deny the pain. But you chose to go through it. Now, you can stand beside others without controlling them. You can understand without needing to be right. You can love without needing to own. You can guide without manipulating because you learned these things with yourself. You're no longer trying to save everyone or desperate to be seen. You simply walk in alignment with your feelings, and that is enough. Those who resonate will come closer. Those who don't will continue on their own path, and you'll be at peace with both outcomes. Your goal is no longer to belong, but to be in harmony with yourself. You begin to understand that your sensitivity was never a weakness, but a misunderstood gift. Your need for depth wasn't a flaw, but a call for something more. Your discomfort with superficiality wasn't arrogance. It was a sign you were born to go beyond the obvious, beyond the common, beyond what most settle for. Not everyone will understand. Some will say you're too much. Others will think you're making it up. But you no longer need to explain yourself. You've made peace with being different, and now honor it. In your difference lies your essence, your truth, your power. If this resonates with you and feels like no accident, perhaps it's time. Time to stop hiding who you are and start honoring your sensitivity as a strength, seeing your uniqueness not as a burden, but as the gift it truly is. The world doesn't need more masks. It needs awakened souls like yours. If this message resonates with you, stirring something your soul already knew, I invite you to continue this journey with us. Subscribe to the channel and join us as we delve deeper into these sacred spaces where the mind, soul, and consciousness converge.